Want to start getting into the bigger one, I guess, Brett?
Sure, absolutely. And this one could be interesting. And please, guys, feel free to chime in with comments and chat requests as well, just to add whatever you want to add to this as well. But unless you've been living under a rock for the last week, you've probably seen or heard about a potential new Canon camera that could have a 90 megapixel sensor. And right now it's been dubbed the R5s, which would make sense, seeing as that is the S moniker is normally Canon's high megapixel naming terminology. But you know, I think we're kind of getting at a point now where the megapixel wars have just gone on for so long, Chris, you know, and it seems like every new camera that comes out, the main headline feature is a new sensor. And I get it, you know, because that number is quantifiable and it's an easy way for a camera manufacturer to say, well, 61 megapixels better than 60, so our camera's the best, right?
Oh,
But you know, I think that so much time and effort is being placed into getting that megapixel count up that maybe some other innovations are being forgotten about, or not, you know, just not being thought about at all. That could really help improve things for us as photographers.
No, I agree with you 1,000%. You know, sometimes when we'll go into NDA meetings, I feel like they sometimes won't even mention like the sensor count. And you're sitting there, you're just like, what's the megapixel count? You're talking about all these other features. They're not really that incredibly innovative, but like, just give me like the meat and potatoes of everything. And then you find out it's like, oh no, it's the same sensor in this other camera. Like, story of Olympus for so long, man.
Yep.
Like,
Definitely.
how long were they using that 16 megapixel sensor, which granted I liked,
Yep.
but then there's also that 20 megapixel sensor. That thing's been around for over 5 years, I think.
6 and 5 years respectively now. I think they've both been around.
Yeah, so it's a little insane.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, it's what was I going to say? I've kind of lost my train of thought there. But yeah, it's time for innovations to come in other forms now, I believe,
Yeah,
rather than just sensor size.
yeah, and I think one that I have on my mind, I've been seeing this for a long time, and I'll explain my background on it for a while. It's a study that I've been conducting in the back of my head for years now. So, autofocus is not the best with people that have darker skin colors, darker hair, and then if you're against a dark background, the contrast detection doesn't always work as well. And I feel that with all of the advancements that we've made in AI and everything else, that these camera manufacturers can improve that a lot more. And I feel like that could help change the entire industry, modeling, and everything else.
That's a huge one. That
Yeah.
is absolutely massive, because yeah, you're absolutely right. Going back and thinking about photo shoots I've done in the past, yeah, that's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. I did a shoot recently where I was shooting an Indian model, and she has really dark hair. And I decided that, you'll see the photos later this week. I decided that I would put a black muslin tarp down, and then we would put like flower petals everywhere. And then I used like my Profoto B10 with the modeling lamp on and a 7-foot umbrella. So that was giving the camera like some extra help to focus on her face. But
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't always find her face when she would like turn this way or that way or that way or that way. It couldn't always find her face, and it couldn't necessarily tell the difference between her skin, her hair, and the black backdrop. And I've seen that happen with many different camera systems, and I think that they need to fix that, and they need to change that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'd think, and I don't know what camera you were using, but you'd think with modern autofocus technologies, that would already be taken care of. I mean, this is not photographing people of color. It's not a new thing. You know, why aren't there better algorithms for this already?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I've also felt the same thing with the way that certain white balances work. I've been doing that study for a really long time, and there is there's a Vox video about how film, like Kodak film and Fuji film and all that kind of stuff, was more tailored towards lighter skin tones. And they had to do a whole bunch of different chemistry for darker skin tones. So I'm just thinking about, like, you know, it goes hand in hand with something else I want to talk about later on. I think we need, to your point, we're pushing megapixels too much. We're pushing high ISOs way too much. Like, we don't really need anything beyond 12,800.
Yep.
The other big thing that we're not pushing hard enough, I feel, is color depth. Like, I'm seeing all of these great presets now coming from like RNI and other places that take greens and they convert them to like a purple or something like that, like for Kodak Aerochrome. But I wrote a piece a long time ago saying, why can't we do something more for color depth? Like, you see my skin right now. Why can't we make me purple? Or why can't we make this red? And this over here, why can't it be made green? And this entire, like, the wood backdrop, the wood, actually, I'm now just realizing that I matched my bookcase to my floor. But anyway, why couldn't we make all of that blue? I don't really understand why it's not possible, because Adobe RGB is very, very capable. And if not, like, they can do something in AI, with AI built into the cameras. And I mean, that's just part of the innovation that I feel like we should be able to do. And that also goes hand in hand with what I was saying about white balance and colors and all that stuff.
Absolutely. You know, everything you just mentioned there, I think could be, okay, so for me, one of the biggest innovations in the last maybe 4, possibly 5 years was a transition from regular CMOS sensors to BSI sensors. That was a huge innovation in terms of sensor technology. I think the next biggest one that's going to address a lot of those things will be moving from BSI sensors to global shutters, global sensors that have much faster readouts, because you're getting the whole sensor read at the whole time. It will eliminate things like rolling shutter. It will improve dynamic range. It should probably include improve color depth as well. And I know the technologies out there. There are some industrial cameras that Sony have made that have global shutters in them, but I think that's going to have to be one of the next big steps coming into cameras, is not so much focusing on megapixels of the sensors, but the sensor technology itself.
I also remember reading that companies are working on this thing called the organic sensor that would go hand in hand with those and give you like super insane dynamic range.
I think that was a joint venture between Fujifilm and Panasonic, maybe.
Yeah.
Who were working on organic sensor that included like this really thin layer of a special material that would help that.
Hold on, someone's just asking questions. Michael is saying, why invest in an overly competitive declining market? Cameras are old-timey boomer toys only. Half kidding. I'm gonna read that in spite and drink some warm milk before I go to bed, Mike. Declining industry also means it's harder to attract talent in areas like AI. I agree with you in some ways, but also then in that case, let's not be innovative. Let's make them sort of like the watch industry. Let's make cameras like jewelry. Like, you know, I own 2 Leicas. They're behind me on the shelf. Why not make them objects of lust then? If, you know, the phones are winning that battle. But I mean, it seems like camera manufacturers want to go the other way and they want to innovate harder. So they really should be innovating harder then. And that's really what we're talking about here.
Absolutely.
Other things, let's the iPad. Panoramic features. So that's a big one. So with your phone, you guys remember years ago, like people would just sit there and they would do something like,
yep,
with their phones for like
for a nicer effect.
Exactly. Yep. But more than that too, like basically like creating almost like a 3D effect all around you that you could just go around and check out. But yes, the Brenner effect in some ways. Why can't we do that in cameras? Like all you can do is like a panoramic setting like this, and that's it. But these processors are incredibly powerful. You already have a lot of megapixels. You have the image stabilization technology built in. Why can't we take it further? Why can't these cameras do what phones have been doing for so long?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of my biggest things as well is we have the technology to do this. We know we do because, like you say, we've got cell phones that can do this. One of the biggest problems I see, I haven't honestly picked up a camera for quite a while now, and have honestly been blown away by it, because every camera you pick up is essentially the same. Okay, they have IAF, that was great innovation when it came out, fantastic. Flippy screen, even Sony's caught up with a flippy screen now, you know. IBIS, Canon's finally jumped into the 21st century with IBIS in the R5 and R6. There's nothing in any camera now that makes any camera stand out from another camera, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And so bringing AI is going to be huge, whether you like it or love it or hate it, it's coming. But I think that there needs to be a shift in thinking and updating cameras from the archaic systems that we have now. And they need to bring in more AI, more phone features, more touchscreen features that we have in cell phones. There's no reason why a $4,000 camera shouldn't have a touchscreen that's as good as a cell phone that came out in 2007. You know, I mean, some cameras don't even have touchscreens, and you had the iPhone out in 2007 that pioneered touchscreen technology. So why hasn't that shifted over into the camera industry as well?
Yeah, you know, on that thought, I really think that the idea of like organic apertures like f4 or something like that and a lens, that's cool. But I feel like camera manufacturers could say, okay, you're at f4, but let's find a way to blur this background even more and limit it, I guess, per the lens. So if you buy an f1.2 from Canon, like you're actually going to get organically f1.2, but you could work on like the aperture, the bokeh a little bit more. I think Sony could do that. I think a lot of others could do that. Honestly, I was really, really shocked when I was using the last RX100 camera. Like, I was looking at the bokeh some of the times, and I'm like, this looks produced by an AI. What are they doing? Like, it looked like Huawei, or it looked like some, like, old Google stuff. I was like, what's going on here?
It makes
And
you wonder if they're starting to incorporate it just to kind of see how it goes in one of their smaller cameras, you know?
when I was asking Sony about it, they said they didn't do it. And I asked two reps in America and I asked an engineer, and they were like, no, it's not happening. Like, we wouldn't do that. So I'm like, okay, Sony, you know, because they're still newer, they still have that idea in some ways that, like, oh, we don't really have the pedigree and the heritage that Canon and Nikon do. So they still try to stay more true to photographers, and I guess that's why it took them forever to do a touchscreen.
Gotcha.
But I feel like if they have that stigma and that problem, just create a whole line of cameras and name them Minolta.
Yeah, there you go. This is the innovation brand. This is our new technology brand. This is our experimental division. If you want to play around, come over to this side.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a whole list, but like, what do you feel needs to innovate and happen?
A big one for me, and I don't know if this is going to be more down to camera manufacturers or battery producers, but we've got to do something about battery life, for real. Like, cameras are becoming so incredibly powerful, especially the most modern cameras that can do 8K or 6K, and batteries are just still kind of standing stuck in 2010. And the amount of battery life we're getting out of cells right now, it just isn't going to cut it. So I think batteries are a huge area that need to be looked into.
You know, that's actually a great idea. I don't understand why we can't put like something in terms of like solar charging on top of one of the cameras, because like Seiko, for example, literally charges a whole line of their watches using solar power. And it doesn't really require a lot of power. And granted, a watch and a battery and a camera rather, completely different. But I mean, I'm looking at the EOS R that I'm recording myself on right now, and I'm like, you know, that Canon logo, they could probably put a solar panel there, or maybe like
Yep.
right on top of the area, right by the hot shoe, or somewhere else, because you have that whole flat panel surface on top.
Yeah.
So why not integrate solar charging into that, or wireless charging into it?
Wireless charging would be beautiful. Oh my goodness. It would be so nice just to sit your camera down on the desk on a pad and have it charge up like your phone does. That would
Mm-hmm.
be fantastic for me. But yeah, even like you say, if you had a small solar panel that could introduce, even if it was just a trickle charge, just something. Hey, you're out on the shoot. Some of my events are like 6-7 hours long out in the sun. It would be fantastic to be out in the sun and just have my battery constantly replenish.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But then, first generation problems would come around. They would have to find a way to regulate the heat and all that kind of stuff. But like, whatever. I mean, they're
Yeah.
already making cameras bigger to begin with. Yeah. We have a couple comments. Let's see them really quickly. Richard is saying there are some specialized panoramic film cametodon from Russia. Oh, cemented from Russia. Kiev, the lens revolves like a turret that gets the sensor size and shape. More pixel counts. Yeah, I've seen what you're talking about. Are they all Kievs? I thought some of them were Pentacons. Either way, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jables is saying solar power. I think is directly related to surface area. It would probably not even be noticeable for something the size of a camera. I think they could do it though. I totally think they could still find a way to do it, because a lot of people, you have to remember, keep their cameras in their car, which I don't think is very smart. But when your camera is in your car, you're laughing because you know it happens.
Admittedly, way too much, I'm afraid.
Oh man. So when it's in your car, like it's directly in front of solar light, and it could find a way to like stay charged, especially if you take off if you put your camera in airplane mode where it's not trying to constantly connect to Wi-Fi or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be even better. I usually put all my cameras in airplane mode, and when I'm ready to actually like transfer something, I'll take it out of it. Let me check Facebook really quickly. Let me see if there's any comments there. Nope, nothing more. Okay, so let me bring up something. I'll get back to that comment in a bit. Oh, waterproofing.
Oh yeah.
This is a big one. I feel like every camera at this point, you should be able to dunk it in at least 10 inches or maybe 7 inches of water. It should be able to resist it for maybe up to 10 seconds, and you should be able to take it out, shake it off, and it should be fine.
I completely agree. People are always talking about the declining camera market, which I think someone commented on earlier on. Anytime you can take one of these and it be waterproof for 30 minutes in 10 feet of water, and you can't go out and buy a camera that costs over $1,000 that isn't sealed against a few drops of rain, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's a massive problem. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, granted, like, okay, you have an internal unit here and it's sealed off and all that kind of stuff. Cool. Where is a full frame sensor waterproof camera? Or,
Yep.
I mean, Nikon, like, they made their own ode to the Nikon EOS. I think it was called like the AW1 series or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 1 series camera. And I mean, it could do a lot. They just didn't push it hard enough, or they didn't market hard enough. But also, that was a much different Nikon. Nikon these days is changing, and I feel like there are still ways that like you can sit there and you can market it towards those crowds. Like everyone loves to go travel and they love to go exploring and all that kind of stuff, and they love great photos, but a lot of those people don't necessarily know any better with their cameras. So why aren't those cameras made tougher to be able to resist all the things that people do? Like, I'll demonstrate something to you. So one time, years ago, I was leading a photo walk for Reddit, and a guy gets off the train, and this is how he had his camera set up. Pretend I'm wearing a jacket, lens here, camera here, in the pockets.
Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm.
Not even a cover here, and not even a cover here. Yeah, I know. I know. And people don't understand those things. So why not, jack the price up a little bit more and build that in?
Yep.
Yeah. I think that, if you can go ahead and prove that this can do a lot more than this can in every single capacity for image taking, that then people want to buy this.
It's the convenience factor as
Yeah.
well. People don't want to buy a dedicated camera because this is so much more convenient and it is waterproof. Whereas your dedicated cameras just aren't there yet. Now, we know companies have the capabilities to make fully weather sealed cameras, not full frame ones, but I think there was, what is it, the TG6? Isn't that an Olympus camera?
Yeah.
That was this.
But there are some Micro Four Thirds cameras that are rated to like IPX something.
Yeah.
I forgot what it is. But also,
IPX1.
Yeah, in internal tests, Panasonic rates their cameras to really high levels. And actually, Leica, with the Q2 and the SL2, there are IP ratings on those things because they are that well built. But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, we know that they have the knowledge and know-how and how to produce these cameras and weather seal them as much as they do. So, yeah, why is it still an issue?
Yeah, no, I've been wondering the same thing. We have 3 comments. Let's see. Okay, solar power, we were just talking about that. With an external panel would be totally viable. Onboard panel, doubtful. Fair, okay, but why don't manufacturers make some sort of charging panel then in that case?
Technology is always improving too.
Yeah. Sorry, yes, sensor size was set by film size. I think a large sensor where you can pick the dimensions of what you want to use, sort of taking a tilt lens one step further too. We can sort of do that with crop factors already. Like there's square crop factor. You could set it to 16:9. You can sort of do that. Hasselblad does that already. I'm testing this little guy here. The 907X. And it's got a 6x6 option, but it's also got a 645 option, even though this isn't a full 645 sensor.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are things that you can do. I'm going to put that down as gently as possible because that's a review, Yeah, the Oli Tough Series W300 from Nikon, Fuji 140 WPS. Oh man, I forgot about that camera.
Yep.
Yeah, that was another comment. I just listed one. What's a feature that you want, Brett?
Man, another big one for me, and this has been bugging me for a while. The world doesn't know, but my fridge blew up the other week and I went out fridge shopping, right? And you can go and buy a fridge now that can connect to the internet. That's ridiculous. I don't know why you'd want a fridge that can connect to the internet, but you can get it. And it's always connected. And yet we're still living in an age where internet connectivity or network connectivity is almost completely absent from modern cameras. And again, it goes back to the convenience factor of phones and why people aren't jumping over to getting a traditional camera. And one of them is that because you can't instantly upload a photo to Instagram or to Facebook or to anything else. So connectivity, if it's 4G LTE, if it's new 5G technology, I think that's an innovation that needs to come soon if people want to start selling cameras to more consumer based photographers.
I agree with you 100%. Actually, in my new apartment building, the washer dryer, one of the washers, it says download the app. I'm like, what? Seriously? I'm like, wait, I know how to use analog washers. What is this nonsense? So I'm sitting here, I'm like, really, guys? Okay. So yes, I remember years ago though, at one CES, Samsung was like, oh yeah, make everything connected to the internet. I'm like, why? And yes, you're right. I've seen that with fridges. I've seen that with dishwashers. I've seen that with washing machines. I've seen that with dryers. I mean, there's Alexa now. Like, you can connect it to anything. And I mean, you can also have these like little things that you put into wall outlets and they're connected to the internet. and you can control everything via phones. So why aren't cameras connected to the internet? I agree with you. Well, they should be all the time.
Absolutely. And I know there are ways to get cameras connected to the internet. I've seen it mainly in Sony cameras. I know the A9 II has that capability where you can set up a TCP/IP server. And you can bounce stuff off to a server, which can then remotely send an image, or you can connect it via Ethernet. But that's so much of a hassle. Even just trying to set that up, you need a degree in computer science.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. It would be so much easier. And 5G technology will definitely make this easier with increased image sizes coming, but it would be so much easier, especially if you're a photojournalist, to be able to snap a picture, instantly transfer it via email to an editor sitting at a desk so that image can be used. That would be groundbreaking.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. With Sony, it's even tougher because with the A9 II, like, you don't really have the touchscreen area, but with the S3, you have it.
Mm-hmm.
With the Canon EOS R5, I think it does have features like that, and I think with one of the Panasonic cameras, you also have features like that with the nice touchscreen where like you can actually type things in to make it easier.
Right.
But to your point, yes, you should be able to directly upload to Instagram or Facebook or Tumblr or TikTok, maybe. I don't know.
Flickr or 500 pics. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been asking for that for a while, and the Sony Play Memories apps, they used to have like Facebook and Flickr and all that stuff, and they killed the app system.
Yep. I know, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I would think like Canon would do something where like it easier integrates into their own system. I'm forgetting what their own like social media network is called because I mean I just don't care. I mean that's how much of a job they're doing to actually push it. So yeah.
Gables left a comment and says, wasn't it Zeiss who was going to have Lightroom built into a camera? Yes, it was going to be in ZX. Is it the ZX1?
The ZX1, yeah.
ZX1 was going to have Lightroom capabilities built into the camera, as well as it was also going to be connected to the net all the time as well.
Yeah. But I mean, I know that camera exists. Mark was a beta tester. Mark is our copy editor. But we don't really know anything else.
No, I mean, I even recently spoke to them and they said it's coming out of phase 1 testing, but they wouldn't give us any other details about it.
Yeah. Richard is saying, and I agree with him already, Fujifilm has horrible connectivity. I tried and a Myops, which was laughable. My Fuji can't even reliably connect to my phone. I agree with you, actually. And every Facebook group I go into, there are complaints about the Fujifilm app and the way that it works. Like, it's kind of stupid. Like, you have to connect the camera to your phone, and then you have to disconnect it, and then you have to reconnect it. And then sometimes you have to turn on Bluetooth and turn it off. It's like, yo, what's going on?
Yep.
Canon's very good. Sony's very good. Sony's, I think, is the best. It's very fast. Samsung, back in the day, was flawless.
Yep.
Panasonic is pretty okay. Olympus is pretty okay. Leica, with Leica Photos, is actually very good. Yeah. You were mentioning Lightroom on a camera, and let me get to this really quickly. Surprisingly, of all the camera apps I've used, Pentax and Panasonic seem the best. I don't like many of the new imaging. I don't like the new Imaging Edge as well. Have you used it on your Pentax?
Yeah, I agree with Pentax 100%. It's instantly connects. Boom, done. Yeah, and you can transfer RAW and you can transfer JPEG as opposed to just JPEG with a lot of the cameras.
Because it's DNG, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Going back to Lightroom on a camera, that's actually something that I really think that should be done. Like Capture One and Phase One, like because they're owned by the same company, there's this thing on some of the cameras where like you can put Capture One features into a camera, and we've been seeing that come out recently in a couple of years, in the past couple of years, because like you can add clarity to an image with Fujifilm cameras, the newer ones, some of them, and I love that. But I feel we should be putting a bigger emphasis on post-production in the camera. And, I was actually writing a comment to someone in a Facebook group recently because they were like, oh, should I get this Leica camera or should I get this Fujifilm camera? And I'm like, well, what do you do? And they're like, well, you know, I shoot in the studio all day, but then after that, I want to go do like stuff that I'm really passionate about. And personally, for me, like, I don't know if you have the same experience, Brett. I know some of you guys have this experience out in the audience, but like, I don't want to sit here in front of a computer all day. Like, I do it all the time. I'm sitting here editing, I'm writing, and all that kind of stuff. When I'm done, like, I don't even want to sit in front of my gaming machine over there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sometimes I'll do it just because it's fun, or like one of my best friends, he's just like, hey, let's get together and let's play Borderlands. But if I really had like my own like time, and you know, sometimes I do, I'd just take my camera and I'd go out and I shoot. It's why I shoot a lot of film, but also like Fujifilm, like I get those settings right there. And with Canon, for the most part, I get the settings right there. Sony, to a certain point, Olympus totally with the art filters. But I feel like we should be doing more to embrace cameras for what they are and not necessarily have to sit in front of a computer. Like, I mean, if you want to sit there and you want to like play and act and feel like you're a professional photographer, then cool. Like, that's fine. But I feel like we're not doing enough to take us away from the computer, so to speak.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. There's nothing I hate more than, and usually my mantra is, if I spend 2 hours shooting, it's usually about 4 hours of editing. You know, so you always have that in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm doing an event, and I have to sit through and cull through hundreds of pictures. You know, but there definitely needs to be something done, because I hate sitting in front of a computer. And I've actually started shooting JPEG more now just because of that. Number one, because JPEGs out of camera have become that much better
Mm-hmm.
in the last recent, you know, in recent times. But it's just a drag to just sit in front of a computer all day editing pictures.
Yeah, no. That was me with weddings. Like, I sat there and I had to learn how to be like super brutal on myself and look at an image and be like, am I feeling anything from this? Nope. Continue. Nope. Continue. Nope. Continue. Oh, that's an okay. Okay. Continue. 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 And then I'll do like, sometimes, I don't know about you, but like when it's a paid gig, I'll do like 3 rounds of culling.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll do like
Yep.
first cull, and then it's like basic edits and sync it to like every single section accordingly. And then I'll go through and I'll cull again, and I'll be like, okay, cull these down, and then maybe I'll edit it again, and then I'll edit again and cull. Like, it really varies, but like, I don't want to do that. I
Yeah.
don't want to sit
No,
here in front of a computer doing that.
I want to be out there taking more pictures.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that they can do features in the cameras that allow us to do that a little bit better. I think it starts with embracing ratings in camera better. Like,
Mm-hmm.
with Canon, the EOS R5, like, you have the rate button up there, and it's so
Yep.
nice. And with Sony, I set that up. Fujifilm, it's a little tougher to do it. Olympus, I've been begging them for like 3 generations, like, put rating in the cameras. Like, it's not that hard.
It's a simple
Panasonic,
line of code. Come on.
yeah, exactly. But there are photographers that are like, oh no, I do that on the computer. I'm like, okay. But like, you know, it's much faster when you do it on the camera. And obviously I'm not saying it like that. You have to find a way to say it like very gently, like, you can save time by doing this. Here, drink this Kool-Aid.
There you go.
Yeah, but when they finally do it, they're like, oh man, I'm saving so much time. I'm like, yeah, isn't it nice to have your life back?
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see if my notes. App ecosystems. That was the only other thing that I had. And you know, let's get through this. App ecosystems. I feel like that could be a huge thing when they start opening up to like third-party developers the way that Apple does. But you know, Sony of all brands could totally find a way to do this.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny because I was thinking the exact same thing right before we came on air. Wouldn't it be so cool if a camera company would open up their API so that the thousands, hundreds of thousands of creative people out there create apps that could make our life so much easier? Hey, I'd be happy to download a 99-cent app on a camera that could help me create a more unique image.
Totally. And actually right now, so I have the Hasselblad here. Like, look how app-like that looks.
Oh yeah, love Hassie for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that already looks like an app. And Leica has an interface that's very, let me move that closer to my face so you guys can see that. Leica has an interface that's very similar to this. And Sony also used to have an interface that's very similar to this.
Hmm.
And then Sony, they were drinking a little bit too much of their own Kool-Aid. This interface is still some of the best I've seen. Canon
Yep.
is very good for what it is. Leica, for the most part, is very good, but actually I feel like sometimes they might need more buttons. But an interface like that, I feel like anyone would be like, hey, yeah, why don't I get it?
Exactly. You know, we're so used to seeing little squares on a phone screen. Why aren't options in a phone designed in the same way, but just makes sense, just like on the Hasselblad? You know, I think even on the Hasselblad, you can drag and drop around and change the icons around into different positions as well to improve your workflow, which is excellent. It's such
Yeah.
a simple feature that makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, you absolutely can. Actually, when you're saying that, I'm thinking about all these other things, like installing Lightroom on a camera, or like if Capture One actually does make a mobile app, which I know that they've been looking into. That's another thing.
Yep.
RNI Films, I think, is great. I used to do this app that made double exposures a lot easier, so that would be awesome. Um,
Hmm.
and then there are all those other fun things, like a couple of years ago, I felt like the 90s were back and then they went away. And now apparently like they're coming back again in some ways, along with like disco stuff from the 70s and all that. And, that 90s aesthetic of, you know, uh, having like the video static across the image and like the big
Hmm.
grain and like the fisheye and all that kind of stuff. Like that'd be cool if I could put that in via an app.
Yeah.
Um, and be able to customize it and create my own looks and all that kind of stuff. And think about that. People would sit there and they'd be like, "Man, I want that image. How do you do that?" So it's like, "Oh, well, you got to buy this camera, and then you got to get this lens, and then you got to get these apps." People would spend money on that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, it's always boggled my mind why a lot of well, all camera manufacturers make their own proprietary software when you can. Android is open source, and you can take Android and you can make it anything you want it to be, and you could give access to an app store really easily. So I'm always wondered why camera manufacturers haven't gone that route.
Yeah, no, I've wondered the same thing. I mean, let's think about these in terms of phone manufacturers. I mean, Leica teams up with Huawei.
Hmm.
Um, Canon doesn't have one. Canon had one, I think, in Japan. That's really about it. Panasonic had a camera phone that was pretty good, and then it just couldn't keep up with the Android. Sony has.
Yep,
Samsung, I really wish in some ways they came back to the camera world, but they're not going to
me
do it.
too.
Yeah. Um, yeah, no, they could find a way to do it. I agree with you. In some ways, I feel like that old Samsung Galaxy NX was a little bit too ahead of its time, but if
Hmm.
they kept up with it, they probably would have been number one at this point.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't doubt that at all. And yet here we are in 2020 with camera manufacturers that can't even develop an app to transfer pictures between their cameras and the phone.
Exactly. Looking at these comments, Capture One has a mobile app. It transfers RAW and JPEGs via Wi-Fi or phone. Yeah, but it's really not that great. I've even talked to them about that. It's not even worth looking at. I actually think I have it. Yeah, Capture Pilot. Yes to the Galaxy NX. Still my favorite toy camera. Totally. That thing was awesome. Let me check Facebook. Let's see if there are any comments there. Go ahead.
Wasn't there an Olympus camera that you connected your phone to? I cannot remember the name of it. And the phone basically became the user interface.
Yes. There was like a thing that like basically it was like a thing like this. You put the lens on it, and then you just moved it around. Sony had that as well too. Um,
Okay.
they failed terribly,
Yeah.
just
A
because.
little bit too far out there for the time.
Yeah, but I mean, there were really small sensors, and there was one with an APS-C sensor. But I remember years ago getting a Sony engineer very drunk and being like, "Why don't you do this with full frame?" He's like, "It's coming. Shh, drink, drink, drink." I'm like, "Nice. So you were working on it, but
Yeah.
it didn't really take off." Like, but also at the same time, like, just imagine like sitting there, like taking a lens maybe like the size of this in your bag and just being like, okay, cool. But also, what you could have done is you could have mounted it on top and just
Hmm.
shot like this. And that would have been cool. I would have been all
That'd be
right
cool
with
to
that.
play around with. Yeah.
Yeah. But they didn't do it. I don't know why. But I feel like this could be a great time to implement that again.
Hmm.
Because a lot of people, like people that are newer to cameras, they're sitting there just like shooting like this.
Yep. Absolutely.
And they're just taking photos, or sometimes they're just holding the buttons down like this. And they're like, oh man, you're so cool. Look at that, 20 frames per second. Oh man, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah. So they're doing stuff like that. But I mean, they have the patents. They're just, I don't know why they're not doing it, but we'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see. Either way, I think we're at the end. Yeah, we're at 8:05 p.m. I'm going to check
Ooh.
Facebook one more time. I don't think that there are any comments. No, there aren't. Last call for comments over in Zoom. As always, we will cut the feed and then we will unmute people here in Zoom and we will answer questions directly if you have any. But it doesn't look like there are any comments. So with that being said, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. We love and appreciate you guys. We will, we have been very consistent. I wasn't going to say we're going to try to be more consistent. We actually have been. It's just, sometimes journalists should really take a day off the same way everyone else should. And it's crazy because I talk to a lot of my friends in other countries and they're like, man, you Americans work so hard. Why don't you guys chill out sometimes? And I'm like, well, look at the world around us. I mean, California is literally on
Yep.
fire. So,
Exactly.
yeah. All right, folks. Either way, we love and appreciate you all. Thank you so much for tuning in and take care.
Thank you, guys.